Alrighty, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Made to Pray podcast. You're joining us on episode 92, where I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by the girls from Drumderg Loyalists Keady, the Colour Party. Alright, girls, how you doing? You good?
Delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having us, Glenn.
Good stuff. So obviously wanted to get you guys on for a number of reasons. One, in terms of focusing in on the idea of colour parties, but also to, I suppose, increase the amount of sort of women who've been on the podcast as well, because these play a very important role in terms of the bonds, not just in terms of colour parties, but there's some bonds that wouldn't have the membership that they have if it wasn't for the women and the girls that are involved with them. So I think it'd be great to kind of explore a wee bit of that together as well. So folks, let's get kicked off with introductions then, and maybe we'll start at my right, and then we just kind of introduce who you are, maybe how long you've been with the band, and we'll go from there. All right.
Hiya, my name's Jessica Elliott, and I have been in the band, I would say, basically my whole life. From as young as I can remember, always had an involvement in the band and have grew up in the band.
Yeah, so my name's Amy Elliott, and I am the head of Drumderg's Colour Party. I've been in the band as long as I can remember, more or less indoctrinated into it, as I like to joke with my dad, Paul, who's bandmaster. Whether it was carrying the band stick, carrying a bass drum head, until the point I could finally join the Colour Party, basically as long as I can remember, I've been in Drumderg. It's all I've ever known.
Great.
And hello, my name's Rachel, and I have been in Drumderg about 15, 16 years now, so quite a long time. And pretty much teenagers.
Okay, so quite a lot of experience, and these aren't the only representatives from the Colour Party here. There's another two. We'll get to meet them as we go along through the questions tonight. So maybe, Amy, if we maybe start with you in regards to some of maybe a brief history in regards to the band itself. Now, obviously, we had your dad and your brother on in a previous episode, but it'd be great to maybe get a recap, where the band came from.
No problem. So Drumderg Band was formed in 1923 and was originally formed as a lodge band. So at that time it was made up mainly of lodge members, but there was women in the band even from that point, and they would have fluted at that time. And back in 1923, right up until probably 1980s, the band's numbers were 2 drummers and 8 fluters, which is a stark contrast to what you know of Drumderg today, with nearly 100 members on the books. And we've progressed from strength to strength through the years, really just growing as a band and growing as a community as well, as a family. And we had a great milestone there back in 2023 whenever we celebrated our 100th anniversary. And like all these guys were here whenever we done that, and we had our anniversary band, which consisted of over 100 members just in the flute corps and the drum corps alone, plus 20 members of the Colour Party on parade at our biggest parades like Scarva Day, and Downshires Parade was definitely a highlight of the season. And as well as that, we had an anniversary formal, which these guys will hopefully say was amazing. So we have hit great milestones with the band, and then just last season there, we debuted our stunning new uniform on the 13th of July last year in Scarva, and it was so well received, and I think it's gorgeous. And we just go from strength to strength every year as a band, and just continue to grow, and it just gets better every year.
Brilliant. Well, and I think one of the things that people always talk about is the size of Drumderg. These are like a wee army. There's a paradox, isn't it? Coming down the road. And then obviously it's very distinctive in terms of the uniform now. Now, obviously talking to you guys before we started recording, you just weren't a big fan of the anniversary uniform, were you?
No.
I would say we're very stylish in the Colour Party, and it just didn't meet up to our standards. So
Okay.
If anyone has seen any videos, just for reference, our anniversary uniform consisted of a Tommy Shanter hat. So it was like a blue cap hat sort of thing with the feather sticking out the top with the plume, and blue knitted jumpers with the red stitching around it. And the girls just it just wasn't for us.
Refused.
It wasn't authentic to the colour party because essentially back in 1923, which we'll get into, there was no female colour party, so we didn't think it fitted our vibe.
Okay, I'm getting a sense here of just that wasn't really well liked, and the less said about that, the better, I'm sure. Okay, but with some says of a band, I'll have to say some of the videos that we've seen of the band during the anniversary year, it was immense because it just seemed the rows of drums and flutes just seemed to keep going and going and going, and that's the kind of, well, for some bands that's a massive source of maybe jealousy and envy, whenever you're struggling to put a band out or whatever else. But that was something else that was serious to watch. Like,
And there was there's one video that stands out, Glenn, whenever you say that, and it was a drone shot from Downshires Parade and it's coming in from above, and you can just see the sheer amount of us, and we're going on for what feels like miles from the front of the colour party to the very back row of fluters. It was immense. It was probably one of my favourite memories in the band so far.
yeah, well, we'll try and talk a wee bit about some of that thing, those kind of things later on and stuff. We don't want to steal
Spoilers.
the thunder for anyone who be listening in. But obviously you've already intimated, Amy, that the colour party wasn't always a part of the band. It came along at a particular phase of the band's history. Maybe you just want to talk to us a wee bit about how that came about, who was instrumental in kind of bringing that in, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so we can't go on without noting that for a short period in the 1980s, there was 2 flag bearers who basically carried a Union and Ulster flag at the front of the band. But this is not what we see as the official formation of our colour party. So it wasn't until 1993-94 that our colour party was officially founded, and it was founded by 3 members of the colour party at that point, and they were all girlfriends of members of the band. And if I didn't mention my mummy right now, see, whenever she's watching this back, she would be going mad. So my mummy was one of the founding members of Drumderg's colour party. And it was sort of a decision.
What's your mummy's name? Don't do that. Give her a...
Lisa.
All right, Lisa, I hope you're watching this. And, yeah,
definitely. So the decision was made by leadership of the band that these girlfriends or partners of members in the band, they'd shown that they were dedicated and supported in the band and showing up to events and showing up to every parade with their partner. So it was instrumental, really, and it goes without saying that it was the next progression for Drumderg band just for me, like, to form a female colour party, and it's never really caused us any issues. Like, it's always been to the benefit of Drumderg band. Maybe at the time they didn't think that, but...
Yeah, because we were joking before we come on, it's a bit like it was formed as an MI5 spy ring to watch what the blokes were up to.
I think it was more to keep an eye on what the boys were doing. The band's man's only as good as the woman behind them, so well in front in our case.
Exactly.
I'd say it often. So, talk to us a wee bit about what is your mum shared with you in terms of what she kind of recalls about some of those early days and stuff, because colour parties, had, for me, whenever the first time I'd sort of seen colour parties of any kind was probably sort of 84, 85, maybe 86 is whenever, it really started to become a thing there. But what kind of memories does your mum have?
So even before that, Drumderg had a standard bearer essentially, and this was a male standard bearer at the time, but it never really expanded from that. It was always 1 or 2 flag bearers, and that was about it. And even that step to 3 and a female, an all-female colour party was definitely something different at that time. And if we were having a conversation about different things that maybe happened in the past, it was a scary time as well. Like, she can recall like parades in Lurgan, and we're parading past the train station and they've been throwing golf balls from the other side of the train station. And like, realistically, at that time, the band scene, especially blood and thunder bands, because I know like accordion bands, definitely, it's a different sort of demographic. There's a lot of women in accordion bands, But in a Blood and Thunder band, this was something completely different. So it was scary enough, especially we're just coming out of the Troubles. We're still in the Troubles at that time. We're maybe reaching the end of it, reaching that sort of point where we're coming out of it. But it would be still very scary to be a woman, especially in a Blood and Thunder band.
I can understand that, in terms of, sort of even as you move towards the late 80s, and then, because you saying it was 90, what was it, 93?
93, 94.
Yeah, so you're 2 years away from the peace talks.
Yeah.
Kind of taking place, and a couple of years away from Good Friday Agreement actually being signed and stuff, so yeah, I can imagine that, and given even also the style of music in terms of Blood and Thunder, and where its origins come from in terms of being a form of protest and stuff in regards to the loyalist community, you can understand that there may be some issues around that and stuff. So 96 or so is whenever it started to become a thing. So you said it started off with just 3?
Just 3.
Right. And then how quickly did that progress, or do you know?
It progressed fairly quickly, but it was a case of, so obviously if it started off with partners of members of the band, not all relationships work out. And that's all I'm going to say on that one. And obviously,
quick disclaimer there, and that there. So it doesn't mean join a colour party, lose your partner. All right, so
yeah, does not mean that. But obviously, there was going to be members. If the rule generally is last in, first out. In terms of if you're in a relationship with someone that's in a band, in the same band as you, then last in, first out. And that was just how it went, unfortunately. And that meant that if a relationship ended and that partner was in the colour party, then they, by natural, they would leave.
All right. So the ebb and flow of kind of membership went with the colour party also reflected whenever somebody else maybe left the band, a flute or.
But there was always another partner coming to join, and
like family members would then, maybe brother or sisters of brothers in the band itself would come along. But I remember Mum would always say that they created the standard for Drumderg, although they used to march a lot faster back then.
A lot of bands marched a lot faster back. I mean, you look at some of the old videos and stuff. Crazy. I mean, you can probably do with that on the 12th of July here in Belfast. They do 12 miles in about 10 minutes at some of those places. But but okay, so it kind of started to become a thing. When would you kind of say that it stopped becoming an issue that, because people would always go, all guard colour party, and people would have been, let's say there maybe would have been some kind of chauvinistic kind of thoughts and feelings towards some of that there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And even if you look at the band scene today, there's a lot more female colour parties on the scene. Me and Rachel were actually having this conversation on the way up the road. Rachel, if you want to chime in there about...
Yeah, so whenever I joined Drumderg, my local hometown is off Market Hill, so a rival band would be predominantly there in Market Hill.
Let's call it out. That's Kilcleany. The Hollies. We're talking about these guys here. That's fate here going.
They didn't actually have a girl colour party whenever I joined, so they didn't. So they had in talks about it, but my dad was in Kilcleany and all beforehand, and he was like, "No, absolutely not. You not be joining there. No." So he actually had approached Paul whenever I was going to join, looking to join a band and everything else.
All right, okay. Interesting, right? So you could have been in Kilcleany, but your dad said...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And 16 years later.
And 16 years later, I'm still here.
But no, there definitely was a perceived notion about female colour parties even back in the late 1990s, and it was a new notion. The idea, especially within Blood and Thunder bands, and especially with the women associated with Drumderg, with it being a lodge band, that it was the idea that the women were there to make the tea, serve the supper, help with uniforms, help with fundraising. But
Jessica's nostrils are flaring and
whereas, like, Mum herself, she wouldn't want to be on the back burner. She didn't want to be she didn't want to be in the background. She wanted to be actively on the streets marching. and joining in on what the boys were able to do. So even now, it's definitely came on a long way. The perception of females in bands in general, even if you were speaking to anyone from your local community, there's probably even this notion. I remember when I was in school and I went to a predominantly Protestant school, so we would have been talking, like Nicole, who'll be on the podcast later, we would have been speaking to other people in our year and they would be saying, oh, why are you in a band? Like, it's not very ladylike as such, some people would have told us at the time, but it definitely has evolved. And even the role of women in unionism and the Protestant, the PUL community has definitely evolved over the years. So you look at your deputy first minister and then your past first minister, Arlene Foster, like women are playing a crucial role in unionism these days. And it's sometimes overlooked and neglected, but we're here and we're here to stay and we want to be on the front lines showing our support for unionism.
I think you're going to get a feminism flag here. No, but I think what you're doing, you're making a great point there, and I think that's one of, as I say at the very beginning when we're talking about one of the reasons why we want to kind of address the lack of, female guests on this podcast is because of that. And we already said that, a lot of bands wouldn't exist today if it wasn't for the female membership that they have, in terms even of instrument players, in terms of, flutes and even drums and stuff as well. So I think it's important what you're highlighting. But I think also what you've mentioned there, Amy, is that the perception of the female colour party has definitely changed over the years, because I have to say that maybe it was some people looked at wee bitty eye candy for the front of the band kind of thing.
I would always say they put the best looking to the front.
See why the time you get to that back row of fluters.
No surprises for who fronts up the colour party then, all right? So, there you go. So if you're out on parade there and you want to get somebody's attention, just shout Jessica and you'll turn around and obviously put everybody off out of step and everything, all right? Okay, great. So, but is there anything else you would say, and this is open to all of you, in terms of how the perception of a female colour party has changed over time? As I say, there was that thing for me. It was bitty eye candy. It was, maybe it wasn't always looked at in terms of, I don't know, maybe some sense of acknowledgement that you were adding something to a band. It was just there for, let's just keep some of the women involved kind of thing, and like it was almost like, we tip of the hat. It was like tokenism maybe, there was an element of that.
No, definitely. And I think that idea comes from our members would even make that joke, and we know ourselves that it is a joke, that what value do we add to the band? Like, it's maybe you're having the crack on the band bus or something like that. But they know themselves that we do add that visual element to the band, which we'll get into slightly later in the podcast.
A lot of people, even people not in bands, will always be like, my goodness, your colour party is plastic. It just sets the band off, It's something just eye-catching at the front. You know who's coming when you see a big red arrow. It's
big red arrow. Love
distinctive.
It. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that then in terms of the role of the colour party in the band, because I think, there's almost elements at times where some of the male colour parties in terms of that were either people who wanted to be involved in the band but just couldn't play an instrument or whatever else, or there's also an element where learners are put into colour parties so that they feel like they're part of the band. That's maybe a different scenario for you guys. So talk about it from your perspective then. What is it you see the role of the colour party in the band?
Rachel, do you want to start it?
So, my opinion of it would be, they are setting the standard for the rest of the band. If you have a really, really shocking colour party, your band is going to look and sound atrocious, and that is my personal opinion on it.
We'll put a wee disclaimer out there.
Just put it.
No offense.
No offense. But no, but if you have a really good colour party coming at you, you're like other bands would tell you, they're nearly intimidated to wanting to pass that band, because you're thinking, oh, Japers, that's a really tight unit. It's really strong looking, and it nearly puts fear into another band that's maybe passing. Somebody wants to maybe hold off a wee bit or anything like that there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the rest of us? What do you think? So, because I think you're right there. I think there's an element of that.
I would say, like, also our marching standards would go right through the band. Like, anyone would say that, you know, we have a good tight unit at the front. Our marching standards are good, and we're really strict on that too. And we want to look good, and then it makes the boys want to look good, because they're going to look shocking compared to us if they're really bad and we're really good. So it's trying to keep that whole flow throughout the whole band, I would say too.
Okay.
You're setting the standard for them.
Brilliant. Amy, what about you? What's your
Yeah, I definitely think that it's that element of being disciplined, and the discipline, it starts from the front and it has to be carried on right from the back. But I also think that the role of the colour party itself is, as of any army, we talked about this even on the way up in the car. Any army, the first thing you see when an army is marching into battle is the flags, and the flags that they're carrying. The flags that we carry are our identity, and they represent so many different things. Yes, they're stunning with their vibrant colours and the artwork that's on them, but they all have a meaning. And we are very, very picky about the flags that we carry. In Drumderg, for example, we have our orange standard flag, which obviously represents the orange men in our band. We have a black flag, Royal Black Preceptory flag, that represents those that are in the Royal Black Preceptory. We have countless other flags, like our UDR flag, that represents those that have served in the UDR, as well as an official B Specials flag that Rachel has carried for years and was dedicated to the band from the B Specials. And along with that, we have tried our best to create flags that are unique to other bands. So for example, if you look down the left hand side of our colour party, there's flags you'll not see any other colour party carrying. For example, Jessica carries this flag, and we call it the centennial flag, and it was created during the Northern Ireland centenary, but was also our own spin on that flag, and incorporates elements of our band badge as well as the centennial flag, our badge. As well, we have a flag, and it's dedicated to the fallen 43, that are the fallen soldiers that died in Keady during the First and Second World War. Alongside that, we have a newly dedicated flag last season, which was dedicated from our own orange, and it's a lodge flag, which has the Bible verse, "Fear not and be just," on it. Alongside that, we have our band flag, which is our band colours. So it's a stunning purple flag that walks at the back left-hand corner, and it displays our band badge. And they're all stunning, but they all have their own identity, and they all represent something unique. So yes, it's visual, but it shows our identity, and it shows the history of the band throughout our flags.
I was sort of thinking there, you kept going through all the flags there. There would be no time to talk about anything else there. But talk to us a wee bit about the B Specials flag then. Obviously, that's your domain in terms of why is that so special to you?
So my great-grandfather was a instructor in the B Specials in the Newry branch. He was ex-army, stationed in Germany, and then came back home to raise his family in the Newry and Mourne area, and became an instructor. And I was kindly dedicated then the B Specials whenever they had approached the band to carry it. So they had.
Okay, so it's not just about carrying a flag for the sake of carrying a flag. There's stories attached to this, and you know, whenever you were speaking there, Amy, I had to say, like, I got a couple of wee chills in terms of just hearing the connection to, you know, hey, we're creating a flag because we want to remember the centenary of our country, but we also want to acknowledge our part in that country by having a wee personal touch to that. And I think that goes above and beyond. And we were talking about the idea of perceptions of colour parties. That for me really takes that to a stretch beyond, hey, we're carrying, you know, the standard, you know, the Union flag, the in terms of the banner of Northern Ireland, etc. That it goes a heck of a lot beyond that, and then them all having specific positions and stuff. The fact that you're able to recall, right, and you know, third to the left and over to the right, but is this flag here? You know what I mean?
Anyone in our colour party could tell you I am so particular about where flags are carried, and certain individuals will carry that flag all season long. Maybe Rachel has been carrying the B Specials flag for as long as I've been in the colour party, as long as it was dedicated to the colour party, and that has always been Rachel's flag. As soon as the Centennial flag came into play, that was Jessica's flag.
I do get annoyed when someone else carries the flag because I claim that they untrain it. Like, it just doesn't sit right with me when I get it, and it does my head in.
Okay. So,
I would nearly be the same.
okay, so there's a particular way that these things have to be folded up and rolled back up and put back into their what do you have a
Like
case
a leather
for them? Like a
cover
leather
for all
cover
of
for
them.
them? Okay, dead on. That doesn't sound like women are involved in that and stuff, you know what I mean? So okay, so that's a big element of what you do as well. How many of you actually are there behind? Have you actually covered that yet? How many of you are there in the colour party?
In total at the minute in our colour party we have 15 members.
Right, so there's 15 flags and stuff. All right, okay, great. That's a considerable size. How does that compare to some of the other colour parties knocking about?
We definitely are one of the biggest on the road. In terms of female colour parties, we have to be up there with one of the biggest. Last season we walked with 16 girls at our own parade, and to the point that we didn't even have enough flags to facilitate all 16 of us. And it's understandable that not everyone can make every parade, but when you have numbers like that, there's very rarely opportunities or very rarely occasions that we walked, even last season, with less than 12 girls, which is impressive
So
for
what
any
happened
colour
to the
party.
person without a flag then? What was going on? What's
Oh,
One for the team, and I
no. I had to source one elsewhere.
right? Okay,
With friends and other bands.
right, okay, dead on. So they helped you out in terms of making sure that everybody had something to carry and stuff. So you're a visual representation of the band, the band's discipline, and I suppose we talked a wee bit, but first impressions really matter, don't they? The whole idea of what do you see whenever a band walks towards you, and you know, if you're met by a well kitted out, well drilled, disciplined colour party, I mean, that's going to give, because that carries through your band. I mean, because at the end of the day, whenever people think about your band, one, they think about your colour party because that is the first thing that they see, but they also talk about how well decked out you guys are and how you're marching in deportment right across the board is in terms of your band. You know what I mean? That's one of the standout things I think from DLK. Do you know what I mean? And
It also helps that none of us ever smile on parade. So if you are coming at us, if you're a different band coming at us, you're just seeing us like so serious faced. We do all like each other. We really do. We're great friends, but we're just so serious looking on parade.
That is also our uniform. Like, it's very sharp, very minimalistic, clean looking. Everyone's very tidy. Like,
It's regimental.
Yeah, I would always go round before the start of a parade, pulling down jackets, making sure it's sitting perfect. Because, like, that's the first thing that would catch my eye at another colour party. If someone's belt wasn't sitting right, I would notice that. So, like, we'll go round, make sure we all look proper. Because, like, in videos, photos, everything's documented now. And you pick up on them wee things.
well, that's it. You can't get away from it now. There's that many videographers at a parade, you know, and as you say, they're gonna, if something's out of place, you know, someone will not be too long before they tell you. Like,
The hat's sitting wonky. Can't deal.
And you're not even safe on the back roads. There's cameramen everywhere and they do a great job, just to say that, but you're not safe on the back roads or anywhere. They have every inch of a parade route covered.
yeah, no, and I think it that, but I mean, that's great because I think from even, you know, more people getting to see what you guys do and stuff, you know, because we'll talk a wee bit about this later on, because some of the routines and things that you do, you know, if those guys weren't about, nobody's seeing that stuff apart from the people who are at the parades and stuff. Is right. All right. So What we're going to do now is we're going to move in and talk about routines and skills, and I think that means we're going to sub some people out here, aren't we? Nicole, welcome.
Thank you. It's
Great
good
to
be
have you here. Nicole, give us a wee bit of an introduction to you before we move in.
My name's Nicole. I'm in the band 7 years. The reason I joined was me and Amy went to school together from like first year. So whenever I hit like the right age, Amy was like, right, that's you. In the band you go. So that was basically how it happened. It wasn't a matter of when you join, but it was like you are joining the band.
You're laughing away there, Amy. Is that not how it happened?
I don't remember it that way.
We'll get your perception on it later. Okay. But Nicole, you were saying of the right age. What was the right age?
Well, when I joined, I was 14, 15.
Well, the rule was 16. I made an
Well, it was
exception.
16, but we made an exception. It was pretty mature for my age, like.
Okay.
And tall.
And tall, so it was all right.
So it was a technical decision.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
All right. So 16 then is a standard for you guys in terms of being involved with the colour party and stuff. Well, that's good. That there's you've got some.
And any point of joining the band. And the reason behind that is because 16 for a lot of girls, that's the point that you stop growing.
So you're not jumping about.
So you're not jumping about, but it's more uniforms. Uniforms are very, very expensive. And if we have to replace your band trousers every year, we're going to be out of fortune. So,
Okay, so you're frugal.
yeah.
Not about cheap.
Yep.
Weight, height, nothing.
Oh, I know when we were getting our new
That's
uniform,
me bit then.
when we were measuring for our new uniform, I literally told all the girls, I was like, girls, no one gain weight, no one lose weight, no one get pregnant.
Just stay the same.
Just stay the same.
Stay the same.
Okay.
We made adjustments if there
You
was.
couldn't change your name until like Robert De Niro. Did you ever see Casino? Whenever he has the dancing troupe and he has them all on the scales, making sure that they're the right height, the right weight and everything.
I know I measure them every week at practice.
Really, out with the tape measure and all, are you?
Excel sheet open.
Oh, definitely not.
There's too many things I can be saying. I just calm down here because this could turn into an absolute farce. All right. So, okay. Well, let's talk a wee bit about routines and skills. Yeah, that's one of the things that we wanted to focus in on. So, talk to us a bit about some of the routines that you perform, because most people, as we say, will see you at the front of the band. They'll see just that kind of deportment in terms of leading the band, but that's not all that you guys do. There's a heck of a lot more going on. So, talk to us a bit about some of those routines. How do you go about developing them?
So the routines really started from one of our past head of colour parties. Linda, she really drove home about doing these what we call party pieces on the road. It was completely different to what other bands were doing. Taken back from sort of American style. If you look at their like high school bands and stuff like that, there they integrate between crossing each other and stuff like that there. So that's where the first sort of party pieces came about. I'm not 100% sure what the first party piece on the road was, but I'm thinking
late 2000s.
But I'm thinking it was the Mohicans.
Yeah, in Rich Hill.
In Rich Hill was the first party piece on the road, videoed and all the rest of it from 2000, from the early 2000s, and they've kind of developed from there. The present minute, how many? Must be at least.
Through the years. Probably
Quite the
up
style there, Amy. You know, is there too many of them, is there?
I'm trying to think through the years,
Must be
probably.
about 15 or 16
Yeah.
different party pieces that most of the girls all know from pretty well from training
And
and
yeah.
practice.
No, definitely. It's one of those things, especially during COVID, we just weren't able to do it, and we're starting to get back up and into that. Especially, we had an influx of new members into our colour party just after COVID, or even just before COVID. Like the other Nicole that'll be on the podcast, there was maybe 5 or 6 girls joined at that time, so it was just rebuilding up from there, getting the standard of marching to a point where it was ready then to implement the party pieces within it. But the party pieces are something that are so unique to Drumderg Colour Party, that are something that we're renowned for and have been renowned for years. Our most recent one was back in 2022 at Downshire Guiding Stars Parade, and it has to be one of the best locations to do a party piece because you can always be assured that there is going to be a cameraman on the bridge videoing that party piece for you. But in terms of the development of it, these girls know what I'm like. I have like a wee spreadsheet and maybe 700 diagrams trying to explain what's going on in my head, and every step is drawn out for them with arrows.
And everything. Everybody's got a number.
Or nearly like your salt and pepper from the kitchen table is all moving around the table.
So giving it all
Needs like
little
the
guy.
action figures, like the wee green army.
Yeah.
Well, there's a merchandise idea.
So
So that's, let's get
Drumderg action figures.
action figures, and then you can create your own colour party. Brilliant. And stop motion kind of thing.
Yeah, and a lot of the time then it comes down to what's in my head, then trying to get that to actually work with the girls. Especially there's certain party pieces only work with an even number or an odd number of members on parade that night. And certain party pieces that can work with regardless of the number. For instance, one of my favourite party pieces is 50. And it's called 50 because it was named after the tune that was played at the time. The band unfortunately don't play that tune any longer. But we still do the party piece, and it's something that we've been working on to bring back on the road this season. But in terms of development, it's a lot of trial and error. If you've seen us at practice the odd night, we're all standing going, how many steps do you think we should take so that we can all be in the right position at the right point? So we're counting out the steps, we're discussing, seeing what we can improve, seeing what needs to be done or what needs to be changed to make it work, especially whenever there is 15 of us. It doesn't make it easy whenever you're practicing in a small orange hall.
No, completely. So what's going through your head then whenever you're going, I'm coming up with a new routine? Because obviously the idea sparks from somewhere. And you mentioned there a wee bit about the idea of the American college type bands and the displays that had happened there. But obviously you're not sitting down watching YouTube and all that kind of stuff all the time. So there has to be something that's inspiring you to do these things.
If you were inside my head, you would be like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? I don't really know. Sometimes I just take the notion that this is what I'm going to do. And then maybe we have, for instance, we started doing this thing a couple of seasons ago where if we were passing bands, because of the amount of us in our colour party, so if there was 15 of us on parade, that meant there was 5 or 6 rows behind the banneret, which would be the standard I would have carried. So that meant that we were 5 or 6 rows away from the drum corps, as well as the space for drum majors, which then meant that whenever we were passing bands, we weren't as tight to them as we wanted to be. So a lot of the idea then came that we were going to swap formation as we were walking. It's a simple swap. I say it's a simple swap until the girls are like,
because Amy doesn't have to move.
yeah, I don't have to move. Most of the time. But a lot of the time it's a simple swap. Maybe we'll be in an arrow and we'll maybe change into like a rectangle or a diamond so that we become a tighter, even more tighter than we were. And we become a really tight unit for passing bands, which is intimidating as well. That idea of that visual representation. And if you've seen us morphing into this other shape as we're walking along, it'd be pretty fierce looking.
Okay, so I believe we're going to get a wee bit, not right now on this episode, but we are going to get a bit of a behind the scenes kind of thing going on in terms of a routine. I think you're going to let us lift the curtain and kind of have a bit of an insight into this here, yeah?
Yeah, we actually did record us trying to practice it last week, and honestly the commentary that was going on as we were going, because the boys are practicing their new tunes in the background, we're trying to figure out what we need to do. We're trying to figure out if we're all doing the right thing at once. And it's hilarious to watch, but it does all come together in the end, and they always turn out really, really well, and are really well received by crowds because they are so different. Like I know myself, if we're not doing one at Downshire's Parade, there'll be people from other bands, people from the crowd coming up and asking, are you performing a routine under the cut this year? What are you going to do this year? Like people are excited to see it. People want to see what we're going to do.
So, what does that look like in regards to, a step-by-step process? Because obviously, if the band are practicing, you have to be able to, they have to be able to stop and start and go through their own wee bit. You are often maybe do you just practice on a separate night? Do you get together separately and kind of go through things? And what does that mean? Is the band then record them playing a tune going the whole way through so you can kind of practice to it? Or what's the crack there?
Unfortunately, where we practice at the minute just isn't big enough to facilitate all of us if we were to practice alongside the band as well as perform a party piece. But we do try. We really do attempt it. So the setup of the Orange Hall that we use, it has a main hall area and then a back room, which is where the band will practice. So they'll be out with their drum pads and obviously their flutes, and we'll be in the main hall trying to practice through whatever we're doing. And a lot of the time it could just be one of us running into the boys and just saying, would you mind playing this tune till we get a wee rally round this party piece, or could you play the new tunes so we can march along and get to know the tunes? So we'd maybe just open the door and they'd just be playing and we'll just be marching along. If you walked in, you'd be like, what is going on here tonight? But it works. It has worked for us for years, and that's what we'll keep doing.
So how long does it take you guys to kind of perfect the routine now? Whenever you've got either something that you've just started working on, how long are we talking? What's
I think I suppose it depends on like how long you're in the band. I've done 50 a good few times now. Amy and Rachel have both definitely done it a lot longer than I have. Jessica herself, she's watched it. She knows what the crack is. If you're a relatively new member, it does take a wee while to get it to click, but once it clicks, everybody pretty much flows quite well.
So you're supportive with each other in terms of trying to help get there. But so what are we talking? Weeks? Months?
Oh, weeks.
Definitely.
Now, if we're at a push, sometimes we're a little bit disorganised, but it always works out. But if we were at a push, we could pull it off in a matter of 3-4 practices, but it does take a lot of dedication and time from the girls, and it is really appreciated that they do turn up to those practices, and we all do put in the effort, because without everyone being there, it's very difficult to then perfect these routines whenever certain people are meant to be standing in certain places and certain people are leading it off. For example, you'll see whenever we do a wee behind the scenes of our piece called 50, myself and Jessica lead the party piece off, and really you're able to follow on. So that would be one of our more simplistic ones, but it's the ones that we all have to move to certain locations. And for example, the diamond twist would be definitely a bit more complex, and unfortunately with the number of girls that we have, it's had to be adapted. We used to do 2 twists at once, we now have to do 4. It definitely makes it a bit harder.
The wave would be another one that would stick out in my head, that would be a bit more complicated, that girls are moving. You have your own routine in your own head. You can't remember. You have to try and remember where everybody else is going and who you're partnered up with, or if you even have a partner at that time, or whatever you're doing.
So it sounds like you're almost like a band within a band, to be honest, because some of the things that you're talking about there are things that, that bands might face as well, like for instance, when we did the tattoo there last year, one of the things that we ran into was people not being available for all of the rehearsals, which meant that you had gaps where people were, and that caused us no end of issues, because somebody was pushing a bit further forward than they should be, or someone was holding back thinking, here, I don't know how to judge this space with there nobody being around there. So it can impact your perfection.
And definitely it could even be a case of, for example, maybe I'm just really picky. I am really picky, the girls know this. But whenever it comes to counter marching, for example, we always parade Lurgan Mini 12th. So instead of counter marching where we all just about turn and walk through the band, I really dislike that, because I don't like the flags on the wrong side. Your union always has to be on your right hand side. And even if it is just for a counter march and to play the national anthem, your union still has to be always on the right, as well as your country flags. So what we do, we've now perfected this, we're all professionals at it, is we actually have perfected counter marching where we actually don't about turn, we twist over the top of each other, and it looks more complicated than it definitely is.
And you're explaining it like it's very
complicated. But it sounds
complicated, but it's really not. Once you've done it
and walk through it, we love a wee walk through.
Yeah.
And then we'll try and do it in step and see how we get on.
Okay, so it sounds like also it's not just about, remembering routines, but there's also something there you've mentioned around adhering to traditions and sort of almost like a protocol with you mentioning about where the Union flag should be and stuff like that there. And there's obviously that thing about the Union flag not being lowered and all that kind of stuff as well. So there's a hell of a lot more in that than just, hey, again, let's just get these flags out onto the street, because, and I think from an outside perspective as well, and I think it's, and one I think is, I'm loving the fact that you're sharing this is, from an outside perspective and from an outside the community perspective in terms of people who wouldn't maybe not be from the PUL community and their view of what they see and this idea that, oh, they're just, how many flags can you get out? That's just there to antagonize, whatever else. And I think you're busting a few myths, even for people in that regards as well, that there's something more
Yeah,
to this,
that idea that they're just flags, like this idea that it doesn't matter where that flag goes. As I've said, I am pretty panicky about where certain flags have to be carried, but it's regimental. Like every flag, as I've said, has a meaning, and our ceremonial flags are always carried on the left, regardless of who's there at that parade or not. And our country flags are always carried on the right, because that is the proper protocol for country flags, especially the Union flag. And even over years, the Union flag we used to carry at the back right-hand corner, but I've now started carrying it at the right, on the right, at the very front behind the banner, because it has to be at the inward post of the mass. We've done our research, we've contacted the British Legion, we've spoke to the appropriate people to find this information out. So it's not just a case of you can just whack those flags anywhere on any night. It's more, there's more thought that goes into it than anything. Like, these girls wait for me on a Friday afternoon.
What are we doing? Who are we walking?
I'll have a wee diagram drawn out of who's walking where and who's carrying what flag and how many of us is out that night. So it's more than you would think. It's not just turn up to a flag or turn up to a parade, grabbing your flag and marching.
Okay. I think there might be some people watching this going, nerd alert, but no, I tell you what, you remind me of our band captain, Stunner, because our band captain tries to think about the parade that we're on in terms of his tune list and where he potentially might be passing whenever a particular tune is being called and stuff. So he's really, I get that, being very precise about what you do and how you put that into practice. Let's talk a wee bit about in terms of membership and growth. And we talked a wee bit about how you recruit members. Obviously, Nicole, you were obviously taken hostage.
Absolutely forced to.
And but how does that normally happen? Is that everybody's?
That's everybody's
Everybody's
situation.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
I was going to say no. Don't say no.
A lot of the time what we do is we recruit internally within the band. So it'll maybe be partners of members that are already in the band, siblings, friends, held at knife point, maybe you work with them.
Not literally held at knife point.
No,
just to
not
get that in
literally.
there, 'cause
Just in case there's a lawsuit coming my way.
that's it. Somebody's going, what? Okay.
A lot of the time it is a case of just being like to my friends, what are you at on a Friday and Saturday night? Are you busy? And if they say no, I can make you busy every Friday and Saturday night from April to September.
Right, okay. And how did you end up getting involved then? Were you in one of these lambasting moments where you were handcuffed and brought to the Orange Hall?
No,
that sounds worse than it really should.
I was unfortunately there before all this
Right,
started.
okay, so you got in pre-taken hostages?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, no worries. Brilliant. And we'll probably hopefully hear from the other two as well in regards to their story, in regards to how they ended up involved in that there. So, one of the questions I did have was, what's the camaraderie like between you as a group? But I kind of, if anybody's been following the conversation here, I think we've got a bit of an idea of what that is actually. But talk to us a wee bit about the sense of being, close together. Obviously, if you spend a lot of time rehearsing together and stuff like that, you must have developed, good friendships and stuff over the years in regards to that. And I suppose that's one of the other things that we talk a lot about in terms of the positive aspect of the band scene is that the friendships, the camaraderie, the connections that we have with each other as a result of being involved in bands is extremely important to us. And it sounds like it's the same for you guys.
Definitely. Like, I will be the first person to say that as sharp as I am with some of the girls on Parade, and maybe as harsh as it might come across that I am as head of the colour party, these girls are some of my best friends, and they have probably seen me at my worst moments, and they've been there. And they've been there for my best moments, and I
You
always
did go out
know.
with somebody from Armagh True Blues, so
Whether that's the best or the worst category, yeah. Like,
No, they've supported me through some really tough times, and without these girls, I probably wouldn't have been able to get through some of those times the way that I was, as soppy as that sounds, but they really have. Like, they have my back and I have all of their back, and I know that if I ever needed someone, a shoulder to cry on, someone to laugh with, someone to go out and have the crack with, these girls would be the first people that I call.
Nicole, how does it feel hearing Amy say that in terms of, some of the hardest moments in her life, you guys have been there, and that she wouldn't be where she is today unless she'd had that support from you?
it's the exact same for me. Like, these girls are my best friends. Like, you think of them like your sisters. You bicker and you fight one weekend, and then the following weekend you're the best friends again. You do get on like family. We are just one big family. Like, as Amy says, like, they've all seen me at my very, very worst and at my very, very best. And I don't think I would have been where I am today if I hadn't joined the band.
How important is that for you, even outside of the band? The idea of having close people that you can call on, because one of the things that I think that we don't talk about enough and probably should talk about more in regards to the band scene is that the positive impact that it has on mental health.
Without a doubt, I am a massive advocate for mental health, as every single one of these girls knows. And if I hadn't joined the band when I did, I'm not too sure where I would have been
Right,
today.
okay.
The positive impact that they all had on me, they all provided me support in different ways than I don't think any of them will ever realise. It was just that having somebody you could phone at any stage of the week, regardless of whether we were parade season or not, and knowing that I had somewhere to go, I had somewhere to talk to, I had people to talk to. It's an amazing thing, to be quite honest.
And that's the stuff money can't buy. That's, yeah.
Like, we all laughed together, we've cried together, like, we've been there for some of those really great moments in each other's lives. Like, Rachel got married back in September, and most of us were there.
All there.
All of us nutters were there at the wedding, and it's just so lovely to be able to get to those milestones. Like, I've seen girls in the colour party get married, have babies. They've maybe left the colour party, but we're still great friends, regardless of why they've left. And it's an experience that you can't explain, and it's friendships that you can't explain. Like, I would say that we have a very close-knit colour party, and we all get along really well. Like, every year at the end of the season, without fail, we will always have what we call our colour party night out, and we'll maybe go out for food, go and have a bit of crack, maybe go up to Belfast, have a few drinks and have a good night's crack together, and just maybe recap the end of the season, bring the season to an end, celebrate our successes of the season, and just have one final hurrah of that season before we start into band practice.
Well, please tell me that the first dance at this wedding was a party piece.
It was nearly there. They were nearly falling over the top of each other, so
Kind of overtook the dance floor. It was a party piece of her own. Like.
Okay, brilliant. Good. So it sounds like you are a tight knit, not just in terms of out front of the band, but a tight knit group of friends together. And I think, and especially in this day and age, as we've been talking about mental health, it's so important for us to have those connections, to feel like, that there are people there who actually care about us, and that if you were missing that they're going to be, I wonder where Nicole is, wonder where, those people are. And there's a phone call coming and stuff regards to it. Because I think there's so many people, because we've got so individualized in terms of community and society these days, that sometimes people are missing out on that type of connection. And I think it's amazing just to hear, just the way that you're looking after each other that way as well. It's not just about being out on parade, it's about the whole person.
I think like the friendships that we have in our colour party are just one example that sort of bust that myth that there's this sort of speculation that female colour parties are undesirable in bands because they cause drama and girls cause trouble and they'll argue with each other and they'll fall out and these colour parties then fall apart. And our colour party are just one example that busts that myth. And I know that that's the case in so many colour parties. They're so close with each other and they're great friends. And it sort of dispels that idea that bands shouldn't have a female colour party, because of the stereotype that girls cause drama.
And I think it's an important part, because I think it's not just about colour parties, but I think some bands have that conversation about membership as well. I think, that there's those all male bands that say, oh, we're not having girls in the band or females in the band, it'll just bring trouble. And then they go, what trouble does it bring? You know what I mean? If we're talking about relationships and stuff like that, I can get that, and especially with married men and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I kind of going, listen, if you can't keep yourself to yourself, then that's your issue. That's not somebody else's problem. But I think that has to go. I think in terms of an attitude that exists within the band scene, that has to disappear, because if there's ever a time that we needed our whole community together, it's now. We need to band together more and more and support each other, because the amount of hate that comes our way in terms of the band scene is ridiculous. And the last thing we need is fighting amongst ourselves around, should there be girls in the band, should there not? Do you know what? See, if people want to be a part of the scene, they want to be part of the history and the heritage of the band scene, more power to you. Get involved, be involved. Because I look at Scotland now, and I look at some of the bands disappearing in Scotland. I mean, the other week there was 3 or 4 bands have disappeared, and there's one particular area, one of the largest areas in Scotland. I think they've got 2 bands that represent those county areas now, and the bands are disappearing left, right and centre. For me, it's like going, do you know what? See if you can get your membership going whatever way you can. Definitely do it. Who cares? We need to preserve our history and our heritage and our culture.
And our colour party definitely has grown from strength to strength, and that is down to the friendships in the band. Like from 3 to 15, like that's an increase of 12. Like that's nuts that we started off at 3 over 30 years ago and we're still on the scene, which is proof that it can work.
Yeah.
Female colour parties can work.
Yeah, and I think whenever you've got an ethos in the band, because I don't think that what we're talking about here only exists in your colour party. The ethos that you're talking about here exists in your band. And I think, that's one of the reasons why yous are big initially, is because there is this sense of connection with each other. When you look at the amount of people that came out of the woodwork for your anniversary stuff, and who were members of other bands. I'm thinking of Ron Stitt and stuff, and those guys who walk with you guys during your celebrations and stuff there. But it says something about, who yous are as a whole, because people vote with their feet.
No doubt.
Do you know what I mean? And I think, if you're not feeling like you're part of something or you're connected to something or anything like that, you'll try and find it somewhere. And if people are flocking to you as a result of that, it's not necessarily just because you're a big band. You became a big band for a reason. And I think that's what people are really connecting to.
And I think that's also down to how our leadership of the band treats the members within the band. Like our colour party, we have this thing where we'll come, if you want a cup of tea before practice, you come 15 minutes early and you can have a cup of tea with the rest of the girls and just chat about your week, chat about things that you've done over the weekend, things that you've really enjoyed. Pancake Day is coming up. My mum bless her, she'll stand and make pancakes for all the members of the band that are at practice. Last year we ran a pizza night for our members to reward them for their hard work at practice throughout the season. We'll have tea and coffee, maybe a hot chocolate night. At Christmas time we'll have a festive party where we'll have party food after practice. It's all about how you treat your members, and it's all about that nurturing element of the band and as a community and as a family.
100%. I don't think, you can get away from that, because something as simple as sitting down with someone for a cup of tea could mean the absolute world to someone at that point in their life. Do you know what I mean? Because none of us knows what maybe everyone's carrying from day to day in your heart and your mind or whatever it happens to be. And just having that opportunity to sit down and have that could be the difference between life and death for someone. You know what I mean? And I think that's, we should never underestimate, the power of something that's so simple as sitting down and having a cuppa with someone. Do you know what I mean? That's, more power to you for that. We're going to talk about challenges and achievements, I believe, and we're going to have a substitution here, aren't we? We're going to bring somebody else in and stuff. So folks, bear with us while we change things around here. So, we are joined by another Nicole. Yeah, and Nicole, you were dead worried about wearing green tonight, weren't you?
Well, nobody told me there was a green.
Well, hopefully, with where you're sitting, we don't have too much that, but I will have an absolute field day trying to make sure that I put a film on and it's on your jumper or on your cardigan.
Maybe we can do that at the end.
just for giggles, we'll get you to sit right in front of the green screen, and we'll send you a video of the band coming out from under the cut. While they're on your, I nearly said something else there, but while they're on your jumper, all right. So, oh, brilliant. So, give us a wee introduction to yourself then. Who are you? How long have you been involved in this? And are you another hostage?
Well, maybe we could say hostage, but yeah, my name's Nicole Bailey. I think I've been in the band about 5 years now. The band's actually very special to me. I actually joined it with my sister, my older sister. Plenty more of them to come. My younger sister joined for last season, but unfortunately with the way things are going and how expensive keeping a car on the road is, she's had to take a step back this season just to keep her car on the road and stuff. She's actually 18 today.
Okay, happy birthday.
She was 17 last year, and that's just sort of where that came. But yeah, it was nice to be able to join with my sister. And then Amy did sort of intimidate both of us because we all worked in the same place.
Okay.
But intimidate probably the best.
So where did you get accosted then? How did this deal go down?
In work at Hunters,
Right.
Hill. Amy worked there, Emma worked there, I worked there. And Amy just said to us, well, what are you doing this weekend? And me and Emma were sort of like, not very much. And Amy was all like, I can fill your weekend. And I was like, okay. I was like, what does this entail? And she's like, do you want to join the band? And I was like, do you know what? We and Emma went home and we thought about it, and we just decided, yeah.
So what was it about that made you kind of go, that doesn't sound like a bad idea? Because I know when some people would hear, hey, do you want to come down and join our band? Regardless of where you are, there are obviously different opinions in terms of, even within the Protestant community, about bands. But what made you go, oh, that's actually not a bad idea?
Yeah, so the likes of my dad and my aunties and stuff, they'd have always been in bands and stuff, and Dad always said just that he'd be more than happy for us to join a band as long as we were able to get ourselves there and home.
Okay.
So whenever Amy approached us, I was like, do you know what? I've been hemming and hawing about joining a band, and it was just nice for somebody within a band to actually come up to me and be like, here, do you want to join our band? It made me feel more like included or something.
Okay.
It was actually just really nice. Instead of just seeing like a poster or a thing up on Facebook or something like that being like, come join our band, it was nice to actually be approached by somebody in the band.
I think, you know what, and that's a great point, Nicole. I think in regards to, for bands who are struggling around their idea of recruitment, and I think the personal touch is definitely something we should be making more of, because for me, I know the bands will do the whole Facebook post. I don't think we've got anybody interested in terms of our band from a Facebook post or whatever.
And if they are, they're wasters. Like, they're time wasters.
Okay, we'll cut that out. So anybody that wants to join a band's not a waster. All right.
Time wasters.
Tire kickers, flag wavers.
But we get people that'll message our page and it'll be, can I join your band? And it's like, okay. Tell me a bit about yourself. Because it's one of those things that you need to know a bit about that person that is looking to join your band before you can say, yes, come on ahead up to practice, especially given the demographic that would be prone to seeing our Facebook page. A lot of the time it is, trying to think of the way to word this, it is people that have no time for the band scene and people that do not want to see our band thrive that will maybe message us off fake accounts and will leave nasty comments under our post. But we believe that all publicity is good publicity.
Okay, well, but I think what you're hinting at there, a wee touch, Amy, is the fact that all bands face challenges, and in some shape or form, whether that be membership in terms of trying to recruit, like we've just been saying there, or potentially negative opinions that are being directed towards us. And I suppose, given the location of the band in terms of your geography, you face a few challenges in that department anyway, don't you?
Yeah.
I would say, you know, a lot of people would say to us, you know, why don't you move your parade into Armagh town? You know, you'd get more bands, bigger crowd. But I think it's so important that we stick to our roots in Keady, just to show that we're willing to stand up in a predominantly nationalist Republican area.
Yeah.
And that we're not afraid to come out and display our culture and show that we're doing it out of enjoyment. We're not doing it because we want to rub someone up the wrong way.
Yeah, oh, I hear you.
I think it's fair to say, like, we are Drumderg Loyalists of Keady, not of Armagh or of Market Hill or of elsewhere. We are formed in Keady, and I think it's important that we make the stand to stick to where we came from and be proud of that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for me, the more concessions we make in regards to, let's put it bluntly, offend people who may be offended at what they see. For me, it's like going, listen, if we're gonna talk about shared space and we're gonna talk about, you know, that everybody has a right to be here, that's all of us. And it doesn't matter where we're from or whatever, or what your opinion of this is. This is the United Kingdom. This is a democracy, and we have freedom of speech here, and we have freedom of assembly. That applies to all of us. We have civil and religious liberty, regardless of whatever people's opinion of that might actually be. But we do have civil and religious liberty here in Northern Ireland. And I think for me, one of the things that I know, talking to other people, is that, you know, the Catholic community's done all right. They've flourished in a British state, you know what I mean? And I think of like the likes of Londonderry and stuff, you know what I mean? And where the cultures exist, they coexist alongside each other there without too many hassles whatsoever. You know, some of the biggest and best parades of the year happen in what is a predominantly Republican city in terms of all of that. So I think you're right to take the stand and say, listen, no, our heritage and our culture is important to us, and it belongs in this town.
And like a lot of the time, we would get a lot of comments from nationalists and unionists alike about Drumderg as a band, as a whole, about the idea of being from Keady, and that none of our membership is from Keady, and that our members are from all over the country. And yes, that might be the case, but a lot of our members have roots in Keady or live in Keady. Like Nicole, you're 5 minutes from Keady, but there's this idea that we have no members that live in Keady. We have no members in Drumderg that are from that area. So why should we have our parade there? But me and Jessica ourselves, like, we have our roots in Keady with our grandfather's murder. And that is something that really ties us to ensuring that we have our parade there every year. Myself and Dad, we met with the police just before our parade last year, and even the police were trying to convince us to have our parade in Armagh, thinking that there was going to be some sort of riot or protest to our parade. I'm thinking
we are very, very careful. It's all peaceful. It's all legal. The bands know what the crack is when they're there, and they're respectful when they are passing through Keady, mindful of the fact that there is nationalists going about their day, going about their evening. So they are respectful of that, and we are just there to display our culture in our hometown.
Yeah.
And just want to do it peacefully.
And I think, you know what, and I think what you're talking about there, as long as there's proper dialogue, and I think it's important, you know, to say that as long as we're talking and we're able to understand where people are coming from, then great, you know what I mean? And we're not going out of our way to, you know, to get one up on someone, whatever else. And I don't think that does us any favors in terms of our community and our culture. But at the same time, if you're being browbeat all the time in regards to, we don't want this here, and why are you here, and what are you doing this for here, there comes a point where you've just got to say, do you know what? Sometimes you've just got to hardline it just a wee bit and go, no, we're saying we're not doing that. And we're sticking to our guns. We're going guns, obviously, but we're sticking to our own, point of view here, because that's what we believe in, and it's extremely important to us. And for us to kind of to give way there in some shape or form is to reduce just that in our own value-based system and stuff. And I think it's important that we keep it, not to the point of fighting for fighting's sake.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had enough of fighting for fighting's sake, but making valid points about our existence and the legitimacy of our culture and our expression of our culture is extremely important. I didn't want to turn this into a party political broadcast here, but
And it's even like Jessica said, like we have been told, and even in that meeting, myself and Dad were told that if we moved our parade to Armagh, we could have twice that number of bands, even 3 times. We could have a street collection worth probably 4 or 5 times as much the money that we lifted our parade. But it's not about the money. It's not about the amount of bands that we can have. It's about showing we are not afraid. We are not shying away. This is where we are. It's a shared space, as you said, Glenn, and it should be a shared space. We respect the other activities that go on in Keady, as long as they are legal, and our parades are legal. It is approved by the Parades Commission, even if it does mean that we have to have meetings with the Policing Board and the Parades Commission to ensure that our parades are safe and legal.
Well, and I think that's just part and parcel of parading life these days, you know what I mean? I think back to whenever I first worked, it was none of that stuff. There was none of these 11-bar ones or anything like that. We just walked wherever we wanted. You know what I mean? But I mean, and it's funny whenever you reflect back on them, but it's a different age now. It's a whole different time, and we need to. And I suppose for me, one of the ideas of being Protestant is this about being law abiding. As long as it's not impacting us negatively, then you know what? If we abide by the law, the forms are filled, the approval's there. Hey, that's the way that the country runs, and that's the way we should be. And until things change, then we need to follow through on that. So we've kind of got on our soapbox a wee bit there in terms of, that there. And I think it's important we have these conversations. I think we shy away from them too often in public ventures. And we need to stand up for ourselves. But one of the things I do want to talk to you about is proudest moments in terms of, that's some of the challenges that we face. But what are some of the proudest moments that you've had in terms of a colour party? What would you say? And we'll not start with you first, Amy. We'll maybe think, Jessica, let's start with you.
I would say my proudest moment in the band was parading with the anniversary band. Obviously growing up in the band, it was lovely to see all the old faces coming back, remember all the silly nicknames they have, and etc. But it was so lovely to be able to parade beside my mum, my sister, Dad, Sam, uncles, aunties, cousins. It was such a family thing for us as well, and it was lovely to have all them older members coming back, and they really enjoyed themselves, and you could see that, and it was just see the atmosphere walking down Scarborough to Main with 20 colour party. It's like a feeling. I've never felt anything like it before. It's just such a buzz off it.
Yeah.
It was incredible. That, and I would say some of the band trips as well. So I've been to Liverpool, been to Belgium twice, and then where else?
You've about to have done a few trips to Scotland, have you?
Well, that was before our time, sort of.
We weren't old enough to go.
The
Left
band has
behind.
been to London and all too, but it's just great. It's an opportunity to socialise outside of, obviously we're paraded as well,
yeah.
but outside of that band environment. It just shows how close we are, that we can go away, have a bit of crack, do what we do best, and then come together after.
So it's provided me some new experiences and stuff as well in terms of taking you into other countries and things to share your culture and your heritage there. Nicole, what about you? What would you share some of the proudest moments that you've had walking with the colour party?
Yeah, so I've only been in the band about 5 years now, and whenever I first joined, we were in the heart of COVID. So there wasn't very much we could do then. So I would say probably one of the main things for me was working with the anniversary band and just seeing, you know, how many people have been involved over the years to where we are now. And it was just really nice to be able to get together with past members and hear about their memories within the band that we maybe wouldn't have heard, you know, obviously with only sort of starting up and joining and stuff. I think another thing, it doesn't really involve the band being out in the road, but in the heart of COVID, obviously with different households getting COVID, we've quite a big family. I have 7 other siblings, so whenever we got stuck with COVID, the whole house was down, and the Elliots, Amy and her dad, actually came to our house with a bit of a food package, and it was just really nice to know that even though we haven't been in the band terribly long, that they had our back and they were there. You know, they looked after us in times that were hard, with obviously people being sick and stuff. And obviously COVID was a scary time back then. Nobody knew what was going on, or, you know, how to actually approach different things. So it was really nice to know that they were there for us, and they were able to go to the shops and get us food and stuff without us even having to ask. So yeah, I would say.
Cool, that sounds good to me. Well, and then just finishing off with you on this, Amy, what would you say is your proudest moment?
I've definitely had a lot with the band, being in the colour party for so long. But one of my first years in the colour party, I actually was asked to join the colour party for the purpose of going to our first battlefield tour, where we paraded in Belgium and France. And the standout moment had to be parading at the Menin Gate and at the Ulster Tower. Like, that experience will always stay with me, and just the chills and that environment. And we were one of the first Blood and Thunder bands to play under the Menin Gate, and just standing there and the surroundings and the crowds and the buglers, it was just an atmosphere like no other. And then the other one would be parading to the Ulster Tower. I think it was the second time that we went, and it was just a memory that has always, even still, has sent chills down my spine. We were walking to the Ulster Tower, and it was a windy day. We were all, so if it's windy, if it's really windy, we will hold our flags, but none of us were holding our flags. And the only flag flying on the way to the Ulster Tower was the Ulster flag. And that just has always been something that has been one of those memories, like, wow, on your way to the Ulster Tower, the only flag that flies.
Brilliant. Amazing. Amazing stuff. So it sounds like you have had some crazy, memorable moments with it, and, you know, and it sounds to me like it's that being a part of this has actually enriched your lives in some shape or form. And I think that's great to hear. It's great for other people to hear that as well. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was about this idea of the future, and what are your kind of dreams, aspirations and thoughts in regards to the future? Because I'm wondering, is expansion part of that? Are you looking to grow, or are you just looking to maintain the status quo here?
It's definitely about maintaining at this point. There's already 15 of us, and if we have any more, I think the boys in the band will lose their heads if the colour party get to a point where they're bigger than the drum corps. So no, I think 15, 16 is definitely our peak capacity. But it's definitely now just about maintaining that close-knit relationship and those friendships that we have in the colour party, and just making sure that we can grow as a team, and we all have this concept that we want to become better together, and it's not just one individual making decisions or a couple, that we all come together as a group and we move forward together as a group.
So how do you think he's handled that whole idea? Because obviously I get the impression that Amy's a bit of a dictator, like. But how do you?
Dictator.
But how do you get into this idea of getting your voice heard and having your opinions put across in regards to that? How does that work?
I would say, like, at the start of the season, we'll always sit down together and sort of see what went well in the previous season, see what we can improve. You know, if somebody doesn't like the way they're being spoke to, you know, we can turn around and say that. Not that anybody spoke too bad, but
But honesty is important.
If they take the criticism badly, you know, you can sit down and address that. And I would say the thing that we would always do is to strive, you know, a competition period, you want to strive to be the best, and you want to go out and put on an excellent performance, that the judges are noticing you and noticing that there's something different between you and different bands that will set you ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's getting harder.
Yeah, well, I can imagine.
You know, the colour parties out there are fantastic at the minute.
Yeah, some people are really up in their game, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? In regards to that, because I'm thinking of some of the, you know, obviously there's Clooney there in regards to that, but he also played a hell of a serious colour party attached to them as well. So they have, it's massive too, isn't it? I think we were watching them once one night, and the colour party had just turned the corner before the band had even reached the end of the street themselves. Like, oh my goodness, this is seriously massive. You know what I mean? But Nicole, what about yourself? And what are you thinking about future ways? Obviously, you're 5 years in to your sentence, and what are you thinking for the future for you?
Yeah, really interested in staying in the band. Obviously, I've grown a lot of friendships and stuff in the band, and I think it's nice to be able to be heard within the band. Like, if something was said or there was something I didn't agree with, I wouldn't be terrified to be like voice my opinion as such. Everybody takes everybody's opinion on board. Not that everybody's gonna agree or disagree with it, but there is always that chance to be heard.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel involved and included. It's not like you're just talking away and people aren't listening to you. You do get listened to, and things like nobody would speak badly to each other on parade. Sometimes things on parade get heated. The band is loud. It's very hard whenever you're passing bands to hear and stuff. So yeah, I think just stick at it. I've got really strong friendships now. I wouldn't want to lose them.
So more the same then, just to keep things going, making sure that the benefits that you're getting from it
Help
stay.
Drumderg be the best they can
Okay.
with my participation. So
Brilliant. And you said that without an arm up your back and everything. So, great. But what if, that's an interesting point. One of maybe things that we didn't actually talk about. How do you communicate on the road? How, because obviously there's a lot of noise and whatever else. Is there a lot of, does this one shout a lot, or is...
Not to scream at each other.
Amy actually doesn't.
Amy will turn around and put a wee quiet word in my ear, and I'd
Pass the message, because if I'm walking at the front, there's no point me trying to shout. Obviously, your voice will always travel forward, so our commands on parade are always given by one person and one person only. And maybe if it's a case of you maybe need to fix your spacing, or someone needs to take a step out or take a step up, it always is, I always try and say it's the role of the people in the two back corners to sort of fix that. And that's why I really do trust the people that walk in those positions. And they're people that I know would not be afraid to say, look, can you move up maybe slightly? And they will put it in a way that is always kind and always a nice tone to it. But it definitely is hard whenever it comes to passing bands or maybe loud parades. Like, for instance, Downshires Parade is always one that can get a bit heated.
Yeah.
And it's just a case of keeping a level head and just being able to communicate with each other. So it'll often be a case of I'll maybe pass the message back to Jessica and just say, oh, we need to tighten up to the band, or we need to do something, or maybe the commands need to be a bit louder. And then Jessica can pass that message back without causing a scene and without, because there's, as we've said, there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you look. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because it's one of the things that's always fascinated me, and especially when you started talking about the idea of party pieces and stuff like that. They're obviously, those are routines that you've rehearsed. You'd like to think, you know, but when you're about to lead into one of those there's obviously a command having to come from somewhere.
I think it's important too that whenever you are on the road and you are passing bands and it is loud and it can be hard to hear, that whenever somebody is shouting, whether it's at you directly to fix your space or whatever, that you don't take it as a personal attack. They're only shouting, and people just automatically assume once you're being shouted at, it's a bad thing, but they're only shouting so that you can hear. And I think it's important just to remember that. And then again, we've different commands for certain things that we do on the road, and it's just knowing what they are and listening out for them. As Amy said, there's only one person that shouts the commands because it leaves things less messy, and everybody knows who to listen to.
Well, I think that's important from a communication perspective, that you tell people, you know, that, hey, if we're going to do this on the road, this is what this is about, because we don't always know, as I say, you know, we're not always aware of what people are, you know, are facing, and someone being shouted at in a particular way could bring certain things to them in terms of experiences that they're having and stuff like that. I think if we're up front and we're saying, listen, this is what this is about beforehand, rather than just being unleashed on someone, I think it's important that we do that. So one of the things that you just mentioned it was about having something special for coming out under the cut and all. So if you've got anything planned for this year?
We definitely do. It'll definitely be something that we are going to do under the cut, because there's just something magic about any parade in Banbridge. I just love that atmosphere of coming out under the bridge, the crowd over the top of the bridge, down the sides. It's chaos, but it's the best kind of chaos. And there's just something magical hearing the crowd go oh my goodness, look at this colour party, look what they're doing. So definitely we have something up our sleeve this year.
So you're not going to give us any hints as to what we can look forward to. People aren't going to be doing somersaults and being flipped in the air and all that kind of stuff, you know.
We actually did, whatever we were joking about this, whatever the question said, what sort of routines do you do? We actually said we can do Saturday night, Cotton Eye Joe, Cha-Cha Slide, any of those.
Listen, folks, if you're watching it and you want to see that,
Down Church Parade.
get in the comments and tell us that you want to see it. And if we get over 100 comments saying we want to see Cotton Eye Joe done by these ladies in a party piece, they're going to do it. All right. So, and I'll be behind them with a Bluetooth speaker, making sure that it's going. All right. I would love to hear your band playing Cotton Eye Joe. So I'm sure Paul can arrange that. Paul, sort that out. Exactly. Okay. So in terms of that, obviously, you'd like this. You'd like. There's been more female colour parties coming soon. Is that something you'd like to see develop even further? Would you like to see that being something that older bands kind of bring on board as well?
Definitely, and like I would encourage anyone who is standing on the sideline and thinks, that looks dead on, I reckon I could do that. Definitely get involved. I know we don't have the space at the minute, but get involved with your local bands. It's so good to see smaller bands flourish, and you know it just takes. Seeing them on the street. Like Dad would always say, the biggest recruitment drive you can do is your big parades, 12th, 13th, last Saturday. Banger Day, stuff like that with younger members, and they'll see you and they'll think, I want to be part of that. So definitely, it'd be lovely to see more females, especially, getting involved in bands.
Brilliant. And then in terms of maybe just finishing off in regards to that, you know, what would you say to someone, a young woman, or who was thinking about the potentially, you know, taking up that offer and going to join a colour party? What would you say to them?
I would say be prepared to commit. It is a big commitment, as anyone here can agree. Joining any band is a big commitment, regardless of if you're carrying a flag, if you're playing the flute or you're playing the drum. It is always going to be a big commitment. It's your Friday and Saturday night. It's your once a week for band practice, maybe even twice, depending on what you have on. And it is time consuming, but it's the best hobby that you can have, even if it is time consuming. But you need to be able to commit that time and to be dedicated to your band. It's not something that you can go into half-hearted. And I would always ask, whenever I am recruiting anyone, even if it is that I have approached someone, what are your intentions when you're joining a band? Are you joining that band for social status, or because you want to be seen on the streets? Or is it because you have a passion for marching? You need to ask yourself, why? What is my intentions here? Are your intentions genuine? Is it because I have a passion and a love for the marching band scene? And hopefully your answer is yes.
And hopefully, you know, even as part of that can grow as a part of it as well, you know, because even some people might see things and think, hey, I want to be part of that. Might not be completely aware of everything that's going on, but then get a real feel for it as they take part in stuff. And I think it's important, you know, because we thrive on commitment. You know, the scene doesn't happen. Things don't happen without people being committed. And regardless of whether your band's got 12 flutes, or 112 flutes like you guys. But you know that we thrive on commitment, and it's really, really important to us, because I think if we're being honest with ourselves, you know, it's at times whenever we see maybe somebody's commitment lagging and stuff, it really don't always it, doesn't it? Because you're like going, I'm putting all this time and effort in, or whatever. But I get, life's different these days, you know what I mean? And as we've said numerous times in the podcast over, when I joined a band at first, you know, it took up 5 nights of my week, you know, all the time, you know, and I was, but at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, you can get away with doing, you know, 4 and 5 nights a week and stuff like that, where now when you're 52 and you have 2 kids, teenagers who are doing your loafing, you know, you can't really do, you know, 5 nights a week at this stuff, you know what I mean? So but commitment as far as you can, do you know what I mean?
I would say, stay on commitment. Like, there's no one, and I think it's important to note this, like, there's no one more committed to the colour party than Amy. Put so much time and effort in.
You're joking.
And I think it's just important, as we're wrapping up, to mention how grateful we are for all the work that she does put in, and even Dad as well. Like, there's so much goes on behind the scenes, and my head be's wrecked with it. But I have such a great appreciation for what they do for the band.
Brilliant. I think that's a great place to kind of, call things there, Jessica, because I think you're right. Some of the bonds that exist on the road are down to, key people, 2, 3, maybe 4 key people who are just the life and the soul of that unit. And sometimes their hard work goes unappreciated, unnoticed, or whatever. And the things that you'll never see, this is the thing that I talk about. You talk to some of the guys that run bonds, and the running that they do, the miles that they put in, regardless of whether that's to do with a parade or not, the things that they run about doing for the band, the stuff that goes unseen is immense. And, and I think, the more that we can acknowledge some of that, to say, listen, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate the hard work that you put in to your bonds. We appreciate the hard work that you're putting into your colour party, whatever it happens to be. Even if you're the person who doesn't even walk with a band and you're teaching kids how to play flutes or drums or whatever it happens to be, we appreciate the effort that you're putting in, because the scene doesn't exist without the people who are committed to it. Girls, absolutely delighted to have had you on. I have been looking forward to getting you on for quite some time. It's definitely been on my wish list of guests to have on the podcast. So I'm delighted we've been able to make it happen. I hope you have enjoyed your
Thank you.
experience on Made the Parade, and hopefully it's not the last time we see you on here in some shape or form. We are going to put some videos and stuff of you guys on this. We are going to try and get a behind the scenes kind of thing done as well, which will be great. And Cotton Eye Joe as well. We need to get that. That needs to happen. I have to see that. Right? And then you're thinking, I have another idea that I'll float past you when we're done, and just for additional content. And I think it could be interesting. All right. So, but for now, folks, thank you very much for being on the podcast. And I wish you all the best for the season ahead. I hope you go from strength to strength. And I'm definitely have to make sure that I get down. Is this downstairs parade we're going to be expecting this? So I'm definitely have to make sure I'm at downstairs parade this year in order to make sure that I see this thing under the cut. So folks, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. It's been great.